We are just a few days out from Junior Worlds 2025, and rather than do my usual prediction videos, what I'm going to do is point out the lifters that I think you should be keeping an eye on throughout these championships. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be covering every single weight class, but I'm going to be focusing on lifters who have the most relevance to the Opens in the sense that their totals are starting to creep up on what the Open men and women are doing, and or they're threatening for potential Open world records, be that in totals or individual lifts, or they're just displaying such rapid rates of improvement that you just have to keep an eye on them in case they continue on that trajectory and become one of the best in the world. So each lifter on this list, I'm going to be showing you their best ever lifetime PBs, not just in competition, but also in the gym. And in this video, I'm going to be covering the junior women as well as the junior men in the lighter weight classes up to and including the 74s. And I'll drop another video in a few days where I look at the junior men 83s and above. But okay, starting off with the women's 47s in the junior category, nominated first is Ines Herbaux, whose platform best total is 400 kilos. And you can see her best lifetime PB lifts that I've showed you there on the screen. And her best theoretical total, if you add up all her best individual lifts that she's ever done, or that I could find that she's ever done, gives you 405. So she's 21 years old from France, and in the 400s already as a 47. You know, I'm pretty sure it was only this year's Worlds we saw the first ever 400 kilo 47 podium. So, or maybe it was last year's Worlds, but either way, 400s in as a 47 is an absolute elite total, and definitely want to keep your eye on a favorite in the junior 47s. Okay, I'm going to skip a few weight classes here. Now we're going up to the 63s, and we have nominated in second Nataleigh Hunter, whose platform best total is 500 kilos. That's what she's nominated with. But if you add up all her best lifts, which I'm showing you here, 205 squat, 112.5 bench, 220 deadlift, that's a 537.5 theoretical training total, consisting of all her lifetime PBs. And like I said, I'm not usually one to put this much faith on gym lifts, but with juniors it's different, because juniors, you know, they haven't been doing the sport for decades like a lot of the Open guys have, right? Some of these lifters have only just started their careers a couple years ago, you know. Like Nataleigh, for example, is 22 years old. She's been lifting obviously for quite a while, but I think that when it comes to junior lifters, looking at their training totals is pretty relevant, and you wouldn't be surprised if she matches that and even surpasses that on the platform. So 537.5 as a junior 63 is pretty damn crazy. But top nomination in the 63s is Betty Aborah, the former deadlift world record holder. So her platform best of 508 kilos. However, her individual lifts add up to 532.5, which is actually less than those of Nataleigh Hunter. So this could shape out to be quite a crazy battle. Although Betty does have the bigger pull, 245 kilos. Now, to be fair, she didn't fully complete that lift, right? But still, before she got kind of sort of stuck at lockout, that moved ridiculously quickly. And I wouldn't be surprised if she's able to clean that up for the platform. Her best successful deadlift that she's done in competition is 233 kilos, which was the Open deadlift world record in the 63s up until Joy Namani pulled 240 at World Games just recently. But, you know, to beat Nataleigh Hunter based on how strong she looks, Betty may well need every single kilo of that 245 to get the job done. Onto the 69s, and in third nomination, we have Carolyn Connor. Platform best of 541 and combined gym total PBs of 545. So not a huge jump like we saw with the 63 kilo women that we just looked at. But again, 545 as a 69 in the mid 500s already puts her in a pretty good position. Now she is nominated third because there are a couple of other super strong junior 69 kilo women coming up that I'm about to show you. But she is without a doubt a favorite for podium and a threat to take it all, depending on what we see out of the other two lifters coming up on this list. Nominated above her, second nomination is Janee Kovacs. Now she is something special, I think. So 543.5 is what the total that she won junior nationals with to clinch her spot at Worlds and actually beat Caroline head to head. However, if you look at her best lifts here, 200 kilo squat, 127.5 bench, and a 245 kilo pull, that adds up to 572.5. Now, granted, these are all slightly above what she's done in competition. That's why there's almost a 30 kilo gap between her best competition total and her theoretical gym PB total. But 572.5 is monstrous. She's only 22 years old. And to put in perspective how crazy that is, 572.5 would be the fourth biggest 69 kilo total of all time. And the only three women who have totaled above 572.5 at 69 was Agatha Shitko, Leah Bavois, and Kroll Agara. So literally three of the greatest 69s to ever do it, three of the greatest female powerlifters to ever do it, period. All three of them are quite high up on the GOAT list, which I know I've been promising for a while, but it is coming soon in a couple of videos time, I promise. But that is 572.5 is ridiculous. She's 22 years old now. I'm not saying she's going to go out and catch Agatha Shitko, right? Because Agatha Shitko is just from another planet. She herself is still a junior. She might even be the same age as Janee. But, 572.5, if she can come close down the platform, in my opinion, she's the favorite in the 69 seed, despite not even being nominated in the first spot. So who is the first nomination then? And that is Andorina Bouchoux of France. So she's nominated first with a 547.5 total, and from what I saw from her training is she doesn't seem to train maximally or above her competition loads, which is kind of unusual being from Team France. So her best ever lifetime lifts that I could find just happened to be her best competition lifts, hence why both of those numbers are 547.5. So that performance there was from the one single competition where she PB'd every single lift from the seams of things. She placed second at Open Euros behind Marte Cheno at the European Championships earlier this year. And she's nominated first. 547.5 is still a couple kilos above what Janee has done. But going off of their top end strength based on their training numbers, I would think Janee is the favorite here, especially with the bigger deadlift. But we'll see. And throw Caroline in the mix and the 69 juniors, it's going to be a hell of a battle. Onto the 76ers, and we have Zuzanna Mazur, another super strong woman out of Poland. In the 76ers, 522.5 is her best competition total. But if you add up her best individual lifts, 202.5 did come in from a competition squat. In the gym, though, she's benched 115 kilos. And the craziest lift out of them all, a 250 kilo deadlift. Now, granted, this was on bumper plates, right? Slight cheating setup, but that didn't even look hard, right? Again, she's only 19 years old as well, so she's not even close to capping out as a junior, and she's already in the mid-ish 500s if you take her training total, right? I know 522.5 is pretty far off from a gym total, but she's developing super quick, getting real strong real quickly, and who knows, she could not be far off from 600 in, within the next year. It wouldn't surprise me based on how fast she's progressing. But a 250 deadlift is wild, and a 567.5 training total is absolutely insane as well. So we'll see what she puts up on the platform. But nominated above her, top nomination in the 76ers is Clara Peyraud, who I was surprised is still a junior, but it turns out she is, because she has been around in the Opens for what seems like a while now. But her platform best just so happens to equal the best of Zuzanna from her gym lifts that I showed you. So 567.5, which mostly came via the one performance. The squat and bench came at Euros, where she won the European Championships in the Opens in the 76ers earlier this year. And then she has pulled 242.5 in a different competition as well. So 570 are her lifetime PB lifts if you add all those together. But it looks like it could be a close battle between her and the strong 76 19-year-old from Poland. I don't know what it is with Polish women, but they seem to be crazy strong. So Clara had a not her best performance at World Games just recently. She finished in 4th in the heavyweight women's category off podium, and she only totaled, I think, 550 something. So she definitely didn't have her best day, but she could well need her best day if she is to take out a junior world title in her last year as a junior. And the final junior from the women's side I'm looking at is Bessie O'Brien in the 84 plus category. 290 kilo squat. That was a squat she hit at World Games, which you can see there didn't look crazy hard because it was actually her second attempt, and she ended up taking 302.5 on her third, and she grinded it out. She stood up with it, but she just got it overturned due to depth, or she just got a red lighted due to depth. So unfortunately, she walks away with only a 290 kilo squat, not 302.5. But yeah, ridiculous. I mean, her bench and deadlift are a bit behind. So, 612.5 is what she totaled at World Games. And yeah, like I said, that bench and deadlift, she's not really going to be threatening the likes of Sunita, Brittany, or putting up those sorts of numbers. Although I'm sure she'll improve because she's only 18 years old. 18 or 19. So she's still damn near a sub-junior. And a 290 kilo squat is the 4th biggest squat ever done by a woman, tested, right? Tested and raw. And if she would have got the 302.5 squat, which again she stood up with, that would have made her only the second woman ever to squat 300 kilos raw tested, behind of course only Sunita. So Bessie O'Brien looks like she could be coming towards that squat world record held by Sunita, who seems to have been the strongest squatter ever by quite a large margin. All of a sudden, the margin is not so large anymore with Bessie coming up, and you would think being only 18, she has a lot more kilos there. So I can't wait to see what she squats. She's actually nominated in 2nd spot behind a woman from the Czech Republic, I think. But that's because her nomination wasn't her World Games number. It was a lower total she hit in the 500s. So the 612.5, if she comes in at that, she should pretty comfortably take the win. And I want to see her crack into the 300s on squat, because that would be something special. All right, on to the men. Like I said at the start of the video, I'll be looking at the men up until and including the 74s, and then I'll do a separate video looking at the 83 and above junior men. So the first 59 that I'm going to be looking at is Bodie LaCoe, who is nominated in 3rd position in the 59s, and he's got a monster deadlift on him. So similar to Bessie, he's squatting his bench, so his subtotal kind of lags behind a bit when he comes to the other 59s, but his deadlift is ridiculous. That 275 you just saw there was lightning quick. That was actually from Nationals last year, and that's the best deadlift he's ever successfully done that I could see. 585 is his best ever total. However, if you add together his best competition lifts, which I haven't seen any heavier training lifts from him, 592.5, right? So he's kind of getting close to the 600s. And here's the thing. He's attempted heavier deadlifts and come very close. That 275 by no means was top end, because that was scary. That was like opener speed. I believe he attempted 280 at Nationals this year on his 3rd attempt, but he missed it. And at Junior Worlds last year, he was in 4th position in the 59s, and he pulled for gold medal. So he pulled to take first, so he had to load 287.5. Keep in mind, the world record in the 59s is 276.5 by Kwaku Nyarko. At the time when Bodie did this, it would have only been like 275 or something. But that is how close he got to 287.5. You can see there, he was standing up with it. His grip just seemed to give out and he couldn't quite get it locked out. But if you do give him that 287.5, all of a sudden, his total now jumps into the 600s. And as we know, if you're a 59 and your total starts with a 6, you are right up there in terms of podium contention for Worlds, and potentially even, going and looking at taking the win in the not too distant future. Hell, Ivan Campagno Diaz, it felt like it wasn't too long ago before he entered into the 600s. Now all of a sudden, he's a world champion totaling in the 640s at World Games, right? So that's how quick the progression can be for some of these junior 59s. So Bodie LaCoe, in my opinion, is probably going to take that deadlift world record. I mean, based on how the battle shakes out between him and the two 59s nominated above him, as well as Tyler Morrow, a super strong 59 who's nominated below him with the same total. That will kind of play into his deadlift attempt selection, I would assume, but his strength is there to take the world record, which is crazy. But nominated in second place as a 59 is Kwaku Nyarko, who is now 23 years old, so he's last year as a junior. 596 is his best platform total, but if you take his best gym lifts, he's slightly above that, and his 220 squat, which is the most I've seen him squat, he actually did that for a double. So I don't know if he's ever squatted more than this, but from my quick scan of his socials, that's the biggest I've seen him do, and that is above his competition PB, but he doubled it. He's benched 136 kilos with a pause, looking pretty smooth, as well as a 256 deadlift, which granted he wasn't the cleanest lockout in the world, and a pretty tough lift not to mention, but if you combine all those gym lifts, 612. So another 59 lifter who looks poised to enter into the 600s. All these 59s are going to be presenting a real problem for the open class in the next years, or even in the next single year, you would think. But the top nomination in the 59s is Valentin Dupuy Noel. So 603 kilos is his platform best total. So he is a lifter who is already into the 600s, and he's only 19 years old. As a 59 kilo lifter, totaling in the 600s at only 19 is crazy. You can see his best ever lifts there. If you combine his best lifts, including a gym lift bench, you get 608 kilos. But his squat and his deadlift, his best squat and deadlift, were done on the platform, which is pretty promising. So 608 is ridiculous. Like I said, he's only 19 years old, still a teenager, and nominated him first in the 59s. But like I mentioned, he's got some serious contenders in Kwaku and Bodie LaCoe. Bodie LaCoe is someone who's he definitely will be having the final say with that monster deadlift. So this is going to be a pretty insane battle in the 59 kilo junior class coming up. On to the 66s, and we have Evelio Gonzalez, who's nominated in second position. 692.5 is his platform best total. A huge 258.5 kilo squat that you just saw there that he did at Nationals. Didn't even look that hard, but if you combine all his best lifetime lifts, which were all done in competition, just at different competitions, 696 kilos is his best ever total, consisting of his combined lifts. So that's enough to be nominated in second in the 66s. He's also only 20 years old, so another super strong, super promising junior lifter who is not even close to being out of the juniors, only 20 years old, and already being so close to totaling in the 700s as a 66 is mental. The thing with the 66s is a lot of lifters are leaving or have left the class. Shell absolutely blew up the world record and then bounced back up to the 74s. Panna announced that he wasn't even going to do his last swan song meet at the World Games because he couldn't do the cut anymore, so he's well and truly a 74. Kyoto announced World Games was his last performance ever at 66. He's now a 74. Kasim Sanders dropped down to the 59s. How long he stays there, we don't know. But you know, bit of a power vacuum out of the 66s, and when you have a young 22-year-old, or not even 22, 20-year-old, almost turning 700, you got to think he's definitely a contender coming up. But the number one nomination in the 66s is Austin Nikolai, who, despite the fact that he seems to have been around for so long, is still only 21 years old himself. That's because he was a super strong teenager a couple years ago when he was already totaling in the 700s. So 702.5 is his best ever platform PB. His best individual lifts, though, add up to 735 kilos. A 735 gym total is mental. The even crazier thing is he actually did this last year before Shell dropped down at Sheffield. So he actually did this when the world record was still only 710.5. Which is wild. So actually at last year's Junior Worlds when he competed, he ended up winning by quite a bit. He totaled 690 something, but he attempted to break the world record with 711 kilos, but missed his second and his third deadlift, both of which were 308.5, attempting to take the open world record. It was just too heavy for him on the day. Like I mentioned, he totaled 702.5. That was actually in 2023 USA Pure Raw Nationals, so almost 2 years ago now. Since then, his total has dipped below 700. He's been in the 690s, including at Open Nationals this year as well, where I was actually picking him to win, but that's where Avery Jackson came out and surprised us all. But like I said, he's still only 21 years old, so he's still super strong, still super young, and between him and Evelio Gonzalez, it's going to be pretty close, but Austin Nikolai, you would think, is coming in as a pretty big favorite, given that he's got the much bigger deadlift. And, I mean, you got to think that at 21, he's only going to continue to get stronger. Despite experiencing a small blip along the way, I think he's going to be well and truly back into the 700s. That's my prediction. Okay, on to the 74s, and nominated in third is Everardo Crispin. 730 kilos is his best platform total, but similar to most of the other lifters on this list, you got a few more kilos in the tank there. So 260 squat, a 180 bench, and he has deadlifted 292.5. So that would give him a 732.5 theoretical total, so only 2.5 more. However, the thing is that 260 squat that I showed you was only his opener, right? And he actually moved up to 275 and then 277.5 on his second and his thirds. He missed both of them, but neither one was a strength miss. So here's his third attempt at 277.5 from Nationals. And it's a grind. It's top end for him on that day. He stands up with it. He just gets called for depth. So it was 2-1. He did not get the lift, but that is how close he was to walking away with a 277.5 squat over 600 pounds, which if you add that onto his total, would give him 750. So Everardo Crispin, again, super strong, junior 74. He's only 21 years old, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him creeping up towards the mid 700s, which would make him very much relevant in the open class in the 74s. Nominated above him, though, is another lifter from France, Balthazar Bertrand. So 733 is his best ever total, 22 years old. 283 squat is massive. Looks like he had more in the tank as well, and that was a competition lift, not a gym lift. These other two are gym lifts though, a 180 kilo bench, which he did for a double, by the way. So that's actually the most I've seen him bench is 180, and he was for 2 reps. So surely he has more in him for a single. So that's above his competition PB for a double. And then a 290 kilo deadlift. So you add all those up, that's 753, which again is well into the mid 700s now. And that's including a bench double and including a squat that I think had a few more kilos in there. So adding all that together, I mean, we know there's a heavy favor when it comes to the junior 74s. I'm about to speak about him in a second, but Balthazar and Evelio are not to be, Balthazar and Everardo are not to be overlooked. They are nominated second and third, and the battle between them will be quite interesting. I just don't think they're necessarily going to be strong enough to take the title away from Elliot Sykes. But speaking of which, Elliot Sykes is the final lift I'm going to be looking at today. He's, of course, the top nomination in the 74s. As a junior, he totaled 800.5. Not even as a fully filled out junior. He's only 19 years old. So he's just out of the sub-juniors, and he's already into the 800s. He is probably the most hyped junior powerlifter right now, or up there with the likes of Nonso, Joshua Ngoka, who I'll talk about in the next video I do. But 800 is crazy. That makes him, I believe, the 5th lifter ever, the 5th ever 74 to total 800, behind Taylor Atwood, Austin Perkins, Shell Backlund, and Ilya Marichev. Joe Borenstein also did it as a 75 lifter. But yeah, Elliot Sykes, 800.5 is mental, and he's only getting stronger. All of those lifts were done at Nationals, Junior Nationals this year, which he obviously won. And each of those lifts looked like he probably had a bit more in the tank in damn near all of them. I think Elliot Sykes is well and truly on his way to starting to challenge Austin Perkins, which seems crazy to say given that Austin Perkins is the pound for pound king, and here is this 19-year-old who's starting to creep up on his numbers, right? I'm very curious to see what Elliot Sykes is going to put out. I mean, despite how strong these other 74s are that I just showed you, I very much think he's going to be running his own race because he's that far ahead. And where exactly he ends up, I don't know, but is it going to be closer to the world record than it is 800? Who knows? It could well be. I mean, obviously the IPF world record is 843, held by Austin Perkins. I don't necessarily think Elliot Sykes is going to be able to challenge that. Although I do think it's very possible he'll end up maybe around the 820s, maybe, above 810, 820s, which would be absolutely ridiculous. And that would pretty much make him the third best 74 ever, right? So yeah, Elliot Sykes is probably the most promising junior powerlifter right now, but these are the 17 lifters I think you should watch in the women and the men's juniors up to 74s. Let me know what you think, if there's anything I've missed, or who you think is the most promising out of the list. And in a few days, I'm going to be dropping the next video, which is going to be similar, looking at the junior men 83 and above.